Hello and welcome to episode 7 of Promoting Thought, and this one is going to be all about how to recover from a bad launch of a massively multiplayer online game. We've seen over the past 5 years, really since World of Warcraft took the MMO genre and mainstreamed it, that a lot of companies have tried to sort of follow in those golden footsteps and hit those kind of numbers, and pretty much all of them are perceived to have failed at this. Many are perceived to have failed as games as well. Some of them actually launched to a lot of really critical comments, really bad press, really bad receptions, and managed to recover from that. Games like Age of Conan, Star Trek Online have actually recovered from what were considered very bad launches to what is now considered a reasonably good position. Other games such as the newest Final Fantasy Online launched and got an absolute panning and are still in the process of recovering. And I think it's important to look at both the games that failed to recover as well as the ones that did recover. And there is a constant factor in all of them, and that is that they kept their core community on side and invested in the game, and then used them to get word out as well as combining that with publicity of their own, and maybe some changes in overall goals as well. Now, when we look at Age of Conan, that launched with a game that was considered highly buggy. It launched with an engine that was perhaps a year or two ahead of its time in terms of what the technology was required to actually run it well. It launched with a lack of content. It rightfully took quite a bashing from both media and fans and players. And what Funcom did at this point was to sort of consolidate what they got and really look at optimizing the engine they got. And then they worked on an expansion that expanded a lot of content and fixed a lot of the issues. And then they even went as far as changing their business model to the so-called freemium model, where companies will give you what is essentially a giant free trial, and you have the option of subscribing or paying for content as you want it. It's a business model that comes with its plus and minuses, and I'll discuss that in a future episode, but these factors combined to give it back some momentum a couple of years after the launch. Significantly, it could be described almost as a relaunch at this point. If we look at Star Trek Online, what Star Trek Online did was, again, to consolidate its core community and then give them a lot of feedback as to what was coming. It can be argued that the business model that Cryptic used was to release a very basic game and then use the ongoing subscriptions of what they got to build onto that and expand it out into a full one. There is a name for this kind of business model, but there's also some very derisory nicknames for it, and I'm not going to legitimize or demonize what they're doing. I have my opinion on it, and again, that's something for another discussion, but the fact is that they launched a game which many people felt was not ready, and this is a trait that you can see across many MMO launches. Final Fantasy Online, as we discussed, was another one that launched with a game that was considered unfinished and to a degree unplayable by many. It went so far south in terms of the reception it got that Square Enix actually came out and said, you know what, we are not going to bill any subscriptions for this game until we feel it's ready. And even now, months after its initial launch, they're still not billing monthly subscriptions, which says a lot when a company is so disappointed with its own launch that it takes responsibility. And I think that is one of the key things. That's one of the first things you have to do. You have to take responsibility for the fact that your game launch was disappointing. Your product wasn't good enough. I think this is a theme that can be applied to single player games, but this episode is focusing on MMOs, so we'll stick with that. That involves sort of relieving people of their position. Well, you know what? They released a product that wasn't ready. The person in charge is ultimately responsible for that, so sometimes that does help with consumer confidence, but I'm by no means saying that people need to find themselves out of work. More people need to find new ways to work. The second thing you have to do is you have to get your community on board with you. You have to communicate to them that while you understand the game's not ready, you appreciate their presence in the game, and you're going to be looking at rewarding them for their patience while you build on the content you've got. Then you have to go back and really take a long, hard look at the game you've got, what areas you can expand on, what you can improve on, what you can make better. Again, engaging with your community is a good way of doing this. Players have a wide variety of opinions. Some people will love certain features, some people will hate them. It's no good taking a consensus or trying to run a Greek democracy, but you can get good feedback over the parts that work through engaging with your community, both on your own website, your official forums, and also at a wider degree, maybe putting notices in-game feedback forms in-game, getting people involved. If you get your community involved, what you're essentially saying to them is, look, you do matter to us. We understand we could have done better and we're going to do better and we want you to help us. And at that point, you are getting people to invest emotionally into a product that essentially isn't ready. And you're countering that very real disconnect that people have when they're disappointed with something. It's no good going out there and saying to people, oh, you know what? We like our game. We think it's great. You know, making excuses or telling fans that they're outright wrong is just terrible practice, and to be honest, all you will do is create more anger and more disconnect around those core fans that are actually now disappointed and disenfranchised with you. Once you've got your core fan base on board, once you've got your design plans set out, and once you've taken ownership of the problems your game's got, the next thing you have to do is make a visible attempt at fixing them, and you have to do this in the right way. It's no good saying to people, oh yeah, we're going to fix this, here's the fix, but we're going to charge you for this. The new download content pack from DC Universe is one example of this. DC Universe is a game that I had huge hopes for and was a big fan when it launched, and really sort of fell off the radar due to its lack of managing its community, really, and the lack of community tools in game. They've addressed a lot of the problems, and they've already released a mini expansion which they're going to charge people for now. I think this is the wrong way to do it, because DC Universe is a game that's hemorrhaging subscriptions, it's hemorrhaging players. Whether the subscriptions are still there or not, the servers are very much empty. They've had to consolidate all their servers into a very small number of what they've classed as mega servers. And then they're charging for this expansion. It would have been a very good PR move, especially with the Green Lantern movie coming out, to have said, hey, look, here's some content for free, guys. Come back and try and emphasize that the game has been built on, because the game as it is now is a lot better than the game at launch. But unfortunately, they lost a lot of players and they haven't done anything to bring them back. They haven't communicated with their core fan base very well, and they certainly haven't yet come up with any offers to entice players back. The big hacking scandal that Sony had certainly didn't help them, but when they gave everybody 45 days of free subscription, they really should have been using that time to hammer home the message that DC Universe is a game on the up. It's a game that's going to listen to its fan base. It's a game that's going to engage its community. It's going to give you the tools to invest emotionally in your presence there. And instead, all they did was give people the 45 days game time and kept it very quiet, really. And what happened was simply people did not come back in the numbers that could have done from that. If we look at, again, Age of Conan, the game seems to be doing a lot better since it went free to play. That's one option companies have. I'm a bit wary of the whole free to play model myself. I dislike any market where supply and demand of an item are determined by the same person. In essence, things like XP potions, health buffs, things like that, items that give you an advantage in game, the demand for those can be set by the people making the game. Transition to a free-to-play model is a short-term shot in the arm for a game, because essentially when you transition to a free-to-play model, you can start off with best of intentions selling convenience items, but eventually you're going to have to sell more and more convenience items as people that have bought them will need new things to buy. You're essentially taking the element of progression, which is one of the pillars of a good online game, and placing it into a cash shop rather than into a player's hands. And when you do that, you take away a lot of that sort of treadmill effect that keeps an MMO going for a long time. So the transition to a free-to-play or a freemium model can reverse your short-term trending, but I think the long-term effects of such a transition have yet to be seen, and I think in a year's time it will be interesting to see where Lord of the Rings Online and Age of Conan and Champions Online and City of Heroes and the others that went free-to-play, where they're actually at that point. Because I don't think that sort of transition is something that engenders a long-term player base. It creates a very transitory player base, a drop-in, drop-out player base, especially once they realise that their in-game progression is done, and if they want to get further, they're going to have to do it through a cash shop or a subscription. And once they realise that a subscription is involved, then they're going to start turning their eyes towards the successful AAA MMOs. Certainly, at the moment, you've got World of Warcraft, you're going to have the Old Republic, which, despite what some people think is going to be a commercial success, it is going to retain a lot of players. There's just a feeling I have there that the time is right for this game. The time is right for another game that not revolutionises the genre, but just adds a few new polished features to it in much the same way that WoW did when it came out. There's also Guild Wars 2 coming, which I think is going to have an impact simply because it's going to compete for people's time, but it's not going to compete for their wallets. So the free-to-play MMOs are suddenly going to have this really well-publicised, well-hyped beast of a game arriving with a very good cash shop model and just an upfront fee for a game. And I think an upfront fee for a game and then, a very well-done cosmetic cash shop is a model that can have some long-term success. So these games that have recently gone free to play, I don't think that's something that's going to last. I think what they should have been emphasizing is the community tools. They should have been getting people to invest stronger emotional connections and stronger social ties within their game. They should have been emphasizing new content, new feature sets, expanding on what they've got, bug fixes, and then publicity. Publicity. You need to tell people that your game's still there, that you're still working on it, that it's progressing forward, that it's better than it was. You need to get them back, do welcome back weekends, give them a week's free time, give them a discount on a returning subscription, recruit a friend options, film and movie tie-ins, social media tie-ins. These are the things you need to be looking at, not a free-to-play transfusion. Because although in the short term that will give your game momentum again, in the long term you're going to actually lose more players than you gain, in my opinion. Anyway, I'm going to wrap up there because we've run on for quite some time on this one. And basically, like I said, the way to rebuild a failing MMO is social connections, community connections, content, publicity. It's not going free to play. That's not the long-term answer. If you liked the video, please click the like button down below. Please click the subscribe button, which will appear in the corner of the screen. Check out the links down below. We've got a Steam group, we've got a Facebook page, we've got a Twitter feed. You know, help spread word. If you like this video, help spread word of it. Have a look at the Rocket Hub page, see how you can get involved in spreading presence of promoting thoughts. And overall, just, you know, keep thinking, guys. Keep looking at ways you can tie in community and developers and make gaming just that little bit better for us all. It's been a long one, so thanks for listening. Take care.